Meanwhile, Democrats and Republicans have less than 2 weeks now to come up with a spending plan to avert, say it with me, a partial government shutdown. Another one could be on the way. And a major sticking point, of course, has been the southern border. This week, House Speaker Mike Johnson and dozens of GOP members went to Texas to see the scene for themselves and the impact of undocumented migrants crossing into the United States. In December, more than 300,000 migrants trying to cross the border. Speaker Johnson and the Texas governor spoke about the impact of the migrant situation there.
Under President Biden, America has laid out a welcome mat to illegal immigrants, smugglers, and cartels.
I want to welcome them in until they actually do come in. And then when they come in, they say, no, we don't want them here. We want to send them back to Texas.
Well, the Justice Department right now is suing Texas over its security laws. So what is the impact on the border crisis having on national security? For more on that and some other issues, I want to welcome into our panel J.J. Green, the national security correspondent for WTOP Radio, and a former Fox 5 reporter yourself at one point. Remember that? And Mario Parker, of course, the White House and politics editor for Bloomberg. Gentlemen, good to have both of you here. J.J., I want to start with you because back in November, we had a hearing of both the FBI Director Christopher Wray and Alejandro Mayorkas of Homeland Security being peppered with questions from Congress about a nexus between terrorism and the border crisis. Do we know who's getting over that border, and how concerned should we be that enemies of the United States might try to exploit that back and forth to their advantage?
First, thanks for having me. No, we do not know specifically who is crossing the border, and we can say we have a general idea of the numbers of people, but here's the problem when it comes to concerns about national security at the border. There are organizations and people who have essentially proven that they can slip under the radar, and that's happened for decades. Every now and then you will find a report, you'll find some information that shows you about an individual or an organization like an Al-Qaeda, like an ISIS, that's slipped someone across the border, and their objective is to do harm in the U.S. We can't say that that's the case right now. We don't have the proof, but it is possible, and that's a legitimate worry.
And it's one of those situations you don't know what you don't know. So, Mario, when the White House is asked about this in the briefings, and it comes up almost every time you all have a briefing, and what is their answer to this, and do they have an answer to this?
Well, the White House is still floundering on an answer on this, quite frankly, right? I mean, they're feeling a lot of pressure on this from both Republicans, but what's unique is that they're feeling pressure from this from their own party as well, right? You're seeing some of the tensions play out with some of the big city mayors, New York City, Eric Adams, for example, Chicago, Brandon Johnson, and others as well. So you're saying the White House try to figure out some messaging on it, but it's caught between a rock and a hard place, again, on the politics of it all.
Now, as we look at the situation with the border right now, we're also faced with this shutdown. There is some talk that these two things are going to be tied together, that they, say there might be a deal on the border. What would the parameters of such a deal be, and how does that relate to a government shutdown?
Well, Speaker Mike Johnson, who took a delegation of Republican House members down to the border this past week, is really pushing H.R. 2, right, that has some more stringent requirements for those entering the country. The White House says that's a non-starter, but what you have seen, Tom, over the last few weeks is the White House starting to soften its position a little bit, right? Openness to some type of negotiations.
J.J., one of the things that was in the last spending bill that didn't go through was more aid to Ukraine and Israel. White House was able to get some things through for Israel on its own. But what is the situation right now, both in Ukraine and with the Israeli war in Gaza right now, when the United States does not have the ability right now to send these aid packages?
Tom, this is one of the most dangerous situations the U.S. has faced since the 9/11 preparation and attacks. This is a situation where we know that if Ukraine falls, if Ukraine dies, essentially Europe and the U.S. and the rest of the world are going to be in jeopardy of similar activities. What's taking place there is something that the world really understands or needs to understand, could change life as we know it, security as we know it, around the world. And when you look at what's taking place in Gaza and in Israel, it's a horrible situation. It's a difficult situation for both sides, but it's also tying that to Ukraine and Russia is something that Vladimir Putin is excited about, because what it does is it's a distraction from what's going on in Ukraine. So funding and money for Ukraine is absolutely necessary, because if it doesn't happen, there's a much larger chance that Ukraine could fall to Russia over time.
Yeah, and Mario, it's been interesting to watch this debate on both sides, because you look at the Republicans, clearly there's not one solid voice on where they go. Some Republicans, a lot of Republicans, we don't send any aid to Ukraine to, fight the war in Russia. But if you look at what's going on in Israel and Gaza right now, the Democratic Party right now is not of one voice. How is the White House managing that? Because in their own ranks, there is a division amongst some on the left wing of the Democratic Party against further aid to Israel.
Absolutely. You're seeing the White House try to have a message of resolute support for Israel, at the same time calling for Israel and putting pressure on Netanyahu to start to wrap that war up, right? To tone down some of the assault on the Gaza Strip as well, making sure, you see Tony Blinken right now is in the Middle East trying to make sure that there's humanitarian aid making it through to the Gaza Strip as well.
As we head into February next month, it's going to come up on another anniversary of the Russian invasion. It's the new year. We always look into the new year. Do you see that war wrapping up anytime soon in Ukraine?
Oh, no. No, it's not going to wrap up anytime soon. And a part of the reason for that is what we've seen from Russia in the last couple of weeks. Massive drone and missile attacks against key cities in Ukraine. And the reason for that is because they've had time to build up their supplies, and these delays in the U.S. and in Western countries in terms of support has given Russia the opportunity to essentially put back together that plan that they had at the very beginning of the war that they were embarrassed that they weren't able to pull off.
And Mario, real quick, we know a lot of times when somebody announces the end of a war, things can get really bad right before there is any kind of ceasefire. How soon does the White House think it might be able to put a cessation to the hostilities there?
In Israel and the Gaza and Hamas, in that sense, you're saying Tony Blinken try to lay some of that groundwork with Jordan, other countries as well, to try to step in right there. But in terms of a timeline, it's still unclear at this point.
All right, J.J. Green, great to have you here. Mario Parker, always welcome. And we want to have both of you back to continue this conversation, because obviously none of these issues are going away anytime soon.
Thank you.